Good morning, everybody. It's January the 30th. It's bright and sunny, in fact, beautiful Sunday morning. As ever, I'm here to talk about my journey with alcohol and what it's been like, experiences I've had, the help I've had. But it's more of a ramble than anything else. There's no sort of specific agenda. I was going to title this this video 1 week away from 6 months, which is about the case. I can't actually remember the day or the date I actually stopped drinking. I remember the day, but I can't remember the actual date, believe it or not. I believe it was around the early August, the first few days in August, but I don't recall exactly what date rather. So I think I'm taking it as about the 3rd of August, between the 1st and the 4th of August as being my 6-month without alcohol anniversary, which when I say that, I'm still amazed by. But I was going to call it that, and then I thought, no, I won't. I'll focus on something else that I've been involved with. I've been listening to, actually, and that's a podcast. I don't generally listen to podcasts, but this was a podcast by David Brailsford. Now, David Brailsford, for those of you that don't know, was involved in British Olympic cycling and frankly revolutionised the success of Olympic British sport. I mean, the results that he achieved through his team were exceptional. We went from basically nothing. I think I read somewhere that Britain had never won, for example, because originally he was involved with the Tour de France. He hadn't won the Tour de France, and then in a period of, I don't know what it was, something like 6 years, we won it 5 times as Britain. And it's amazing to think that this man was instrumental in giving the belief to riders who represented this country that they could win this wonderful tournament. I'm not a cyclist, but I've definitely become more engaged with the Tour de France as a consequence of our success. And I actually think that that's a common theme. If you're well, take Formula One as another example. I'm not really into Formula One, but I did watch the Formula One final with Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, obviously for British reasons. But the sport itself, yes, disappointing Hamilton won, and there's a whole debate on whether that was fair or not, etc. But the emotion of the day was fantastic, and I think that's what gets you interested in things and connected to things, which sort of leads me back to alcohol, really, because listening to this podcast, which was fascinating, not just about cycling, but about how he used psychologists to fathom out how the human brain works and why some people will and some people won't. And he kept going back to emotions, and he kept coming back to being emotionally involved. When you're emotionally involved and it means something to you, whatever it is, you tend to be more engaged in the way that, I was more engaged watching Formula One, which I don't normally want. Or, more relevant to this video, is being more engaged with giving up alcohol. When that reason or that emotion comes your way, assuming it does, that's when it's in a sense it's harder not to do something as opposed to easier to do something, because you've now got an emotional connection. It may only be short term, but you have that emotional connection, and that's more or less exactly what happened to me. If you listen to these videos, you will know that very early on, I was, and I'll briefly give you the backdrop here, I was trying to cut down. This one particular night, I'd exceeded what I said I would cut down to. My wife saw this, gave me, let's just say, a mouthful of words. I don't even recall the words, but I do recall her leaving the room, storming off to bed, and something in me shifted. I was so embarrassed. I felt I'd let her down, myself down, my children down, friends down, everybody down. And something shifted at that moment. I can't tell you what it was. I can't tell you why it happened, but something happened. And it was the next day while standing in the shower. And I said to myself, my wife, by the way, woke up in the morning, didn't even mention anything. That's the way she is. She should have carried on, really, because it probably would have reinforced it, but nevertheless she didn't. And it was that day that I decided, well, Friday, you may as well start today. If you really are serious, let's start this. I wasn't serious, didn't think I'd get past Friday evening, but I did, and here we are today. So I think you need to get emotionally connected somehow to this journey. I think willpower will not be enough. And certainly the books I've read sort of suggest that, some more than others. But there needs to be some skin in the game, not just health. And the brain, which I'm starting to read about, is and the subconscious mind in particular, is a fascinating organ that controls you a lot more than certainly I ever realised. And if you can understand that, and linking back to Dave Brailsford, this is what he understood. Not because he understood the psychology, but he brought in a consultant psychologist who worked at a very, very prestigious, for the NHS, at a very prestigious mental hospital, which I won't name, but he knew how the brain worked, and he could transfer those skills, because he ultimately left the NHS and went to work for British Cycling. He understood how people and why people would do things. Possibly that's what's happened with COVID as well, in terms of why we've complied. Probably better than the government thought we would. But if we can understand why we do things or why we don't do things, then maybe we can have more of an impact on why we drink and why we drink excessively. It's a thought, and it's something maybe I'll do a video about in the future, but listening to Dave Brailsford sort of has become the theme of this video, really, rather than celebrating 6 months or nearly 6 months worth of sobriety. Because the other thing he talks about is something called marginal gains, trying to shift something very small rather than focusing on the end game of perhaps giving up alcohol. Focus something very, very small. Something you could do this week. Now, you could say to yourself, okay, I'm going to reduce my alcohol intake by 1 drink this week. A relatively small, especially for me, where I was, drinking regularly all week, and 4 to 6 pints a night. So 1 drink wouldn't have really made a lot of difference. But taking those small incremental changes is what subsequently led his team to be so successful in British Cycling, and I can't really see any reason why it can't be the same for anything else in anybody else's life. In fact, another recommendation I would give is a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear, which talks about almost exactly the same. Don't focus on changing don't focus on changing your life so significantly, because you won't stick to it. Willpower will only get you so far. Do something very small. He gives an example of joining a gym. Don't join a gym. Don't go and sign the papers, pay your money. Do something much, much simpler. Just put your gym shoes on for 5 minutes. Don't even leave the house, and then take them off. But do that regularly, and then build a habit upon a habit, ultimately leading to the gym. You'll find out whether it's something you really want to do or not. Same way with drinking. Reduce it by a little bit each week. If you can do more, great, but take something, a small habit, a small incremental gain each week that gets you on the journey. So I would recommend, 1, reading that book, and 2, listening to the podcast of Dave Brailsford. You can find it in a lot of locations, or even read his book, because I think, I've not read it myself, but I think it will just may help you with and cement the information that you probably need and want to help you on your journey to sobriety, to reduction, to improvement, not in many areas of life. That's the end of it from me. As I always say at the end of these videos, maybe put the drink down. See you soon.